Video 6, or video 56, right at the very beginning. Once again, I did a fair little bit here, kind of pushing the narrative that I was stuck, that I was getting prodded by the sign maker, that I was being forced into this against my will. And I think that was fairly important. This is also the first time I introduced the static, which, the static, I will say, Curly Naka there does not understand anything that the sign maker is saying any more than the viewer does. Whenever the static happens, that does not mean that the sign maker is speaking and I hear the sign maker. That's merely a prod by the sign maker, kind of like poking you in the butt with a stick, going, "Get to work, get to work." The static is merely a prod, nothing changes. The crash is when something does change. And then the full teleport is, of course, a proper teleport. The only way the sign maker can actually speak is through the signs. Thinking back on it now, I don't really understand why the sign maker couldn't speak directly to Curly Naka, seeing as he had before as our friend. Perhaps it was merely beneath him now to speak directly. Perhaps he was never truly speaking in the first place, merely dropping some kind of idea within Curly Naka's head. Well, given the opportunity, though, I would like to talk for a moment about Fate's Grasp as a whole. And a lot of people thought that Fate's Grasp was going really slowly and that nothing was happening, but it actually progressed pretty much as I intended. Of course, there were hiccups, nothing went perfectly. I did run into a lot of problems with the narrative here and there. But I figured what everybody was expecting, for the most part, was something a lot more cut and dry. A good solid hero, a good solid villain, a good solid fight, victory, and everybody feels good and goes about living their lives. And originally, that's kind of what I intended. Well, I shouldn't say originally that's what I intended. Secondarily, that's what I intended. Originally, I intended to end the entire thing on the penultimate video, reveal this person tormenting you has been your friend, and then leave it at that. Bad end. In trying to come up with something, and realizing that that wouldn't work, and trying to think up something that would appeal more towards the actual viewers, I came up with the more base idea of big good, big evil, big fight, happy end. And I kind of sat on that for a while, and it wasn't until halfway through Journey's Home when I realized my original plan simply wasn't going to work. And especially not until the end of Journey Home when I really started thinking about how I wanted to end it. And something that cut and dry, something that made that much sense, something you didn't have to think about at all, was not something I wanted to do. I wanted to do something a lot more philosophical, a lot higher thinking, something that wasn't just cut and dry, this is how it is, materialistic kind of world and kind of story. And so, by this point, I had the ending planned out. But what I wanted to do here, throughout all of Fate's Grasp, was essentially to document my slow descent into insanity, and my snapping at the very end. I wanted every video for me to just be a little bit worse, and a little bit worse, and a little bit worse. And the first couple videos went without much change because you'll go without much mental change for at least a moment. You won't immediately start a decline.
Okay, let's see what you do.
However, this did cause me to slowly fall back into my old Let's Play isms and lose track of the narrative. I'll get back to that as we go on, but the whole idea was, in the final season, was to not have a lot of important plot points and a lot of activity going on, but instead just to document this slow descent into madness, which really isn't something that would happen quickly. It wouldn't make sense for it to happen in all of 2 videos, and then I get better, and everyone's just going to sit there and go, what the crap happened there? What was up with that? This is the kind of thing that it takes time. And I knew from the get-go that in doing this isn't something that was going to appeal to everybody. I knew I was going to make a lot of people not super happy in my doing this. But it is something just a little more me that I wanted to do. Video 56, I'm 8 minutes 50 seconds in, but I realize it could really be any point during night. But it is nighttime, and as such it would be very dark. And I knew that I recorded a lot of this at night, and there wasn't a whole lot I could do about that. The recording took longer than day was, but it wouldn't make any sense for me to just sit back and not do anything for a night and wait until morning to keep exploring with them. So I ended up doing a bunch of recording at night, and I actually put a filter over the entire video, brightening it way the crap up so you can see at night pretty much as well as you could during the day. I know it's night and it's supposed to be dark, but I also knew a lot of people were going to complain. Video 56, right at the very end, when I actually found the Ender portal. I didn't intend for that to be a thing where the sign maker wanted to prevent me from entering the end. I would say mostly that it was simply the sign maker realizing that I had reached the end of my exploration of these dolls' ability, and at this point I was just kind of going on without learning or seeing anything new. And that the sign maker then was brought back in his own memories to the Ender Dragon fight was probably enough for him to stop and go, okay, yeah, we're done here. Video 57, right at the very beginning. Once again, I'm actually pushing the narrative a little bit at the beginning, showing that I was kind of acting last time, going along with his plan, doing whatever he wanted me to do to see how that goes, and then I get frustrated here at the end. Or at the beginning, I should say. I'd say after this point, I started to lose track of the narrative some, and was just ever so loosely tying everything together. I was trying to be very upset at him throughout Oasis, and I think in that regard I was actually handling the narrative fairly well in Oasis. But I am realizing that it was round about time that I actually did something with the narrative.
The golden compass away.
It didn't have to be much, but I needed to start doing something instead of just going about as always. I was, however, pushing the importance of the dream, as I put it, which was essentially the message from the 2 people from the end credits. Knowing that it's important and knowing that I had to go somewhere with it, at this point, I actually had something that I was going towards, something to work on. But after this, I kind of didn't really mention it anymore, at least not for a while. But figuring out what they meant was the important thing. And that is indeed true, that was the important thing. Figuring out what they were talking about with the dreams and the reality and the long dream of life and the like, and figuring out what the difference was between what I'm currently seeing and what reality actually is.
Remember the dream.
Video 57, right at the very end, I was being more and more testy with him as this went on, so I was obviously getting more and more irritable with him as this particular mod map went on. This came to a point, especially at the very end, when I pretty much demanded that I be taken somewhere else. This was intended then to directly lead into the next video, the bunny boss battle. You see, I had actually planned out how I was going to do all the mods and which mod I was going to do when, and I tried to space them out so you would maybe get something a little more boring for a bit, then something a little more actiony and a little more boring again, so we could have a nice flow between everything and not have it all front-loaded or back-loaded. So, then taking us to the actual bunny fight, this was intended as a kind of punishment for mouthing off to him in the previous video. There's not much I could do in the narrative on this one, though, aside from just, it's a punishment. I mouthed off to him and he got back at me for it. And that's the kind of thing that I think I liked doing with the narrative in this segment, but especially after the bunny fight, I didn't really go anywhere or do anything terribly necessary with these videos. And I wasn't really showing too much in the way of progression on my own part. This is actually the first of one of my various troublesome spots in Fate's Grasp, because I had intended this mod to be the big actiony one that got everybody excited and kept everybody going that were wondering when something interesting was going to happen, when something exciting was going to happen. And instead, this entire video was met with a lot of negativity. And I can understand why, but it completely threw a wrench in my plans, and I had no idea if I was going to be able to pull anything off in a reasonable fashion. That aside, I actually think Fate's Grasp, up until the end of the bunny video, was going pretty well. I was furthering the narrative, I was thinking about things, I was interacting with the sign maker.
Alright, what do you got?
I think the biggest issue that I have is that I almost never tried to get out. Save one or maybe two attempts at trying to escape, and I never really tried. And this was a big failing on my part that really dampened a lot of what I got into later. I wasn't even sure how I was going to recover from this video, though. As much negativity as this video got when it was supposed to be the highlight of the area, everything else was just going downhill. There wasn't too much I could do to change it, though, other than just hope the next video had a better reaction. Oh, by the way, when doing Fate's Grasp, I started using some new music at the beginning. Now, I didn't have a mod with nice music in it, like the Aether, to take music from for this. And I didn't want to just take something straight from Minecraft, either. I could look around and maybe find something from a random game somewhere, but I wanted something that felt like it had more importance. The song that I'm using in the background, I think was called Circle, but it was actually made by C418, the person who made the music to Minecraft. This was one of his own albums, though, so this song, though made by him, is unassociated with Minecraft. Come the end of the video, that said, the big issue with this video was mostly how repetitive it was. And I knew that this was going to be an issue early on, but there wasn't a huge amount that I could do about it. Really, I think he just had a whole lot more life than he needed to have. I also know, during this boss battle, that I could have shot the ears. I do know that I could have shot the ears. However, they're so far away in compared to everything else that I have had zero luck actually hitting them with an arrow without getting enough time to practice and aim and shoot, and that's not exactly something that I can do in this situation. Also, at the very end, you'll notice the life counter goes down. I did beat this boss in a single life, and it took a couple practice runs for me to figure out how best to approach it, but I beat him without dying. The reason the life counter goes down is because everything exploded, including most of the redstone that was running this thing. I imagine just the right torch got blown off to mess up the counter. I'm surprised it worked or did much at all after that, to be honest. Video 59, right at the beginning, or I suppose you could say right at the beginning. The Clay Soldiers mod picking up after the Bunny boss battle. I actually re-recorded this entire video as soon as the previous one went as terribly as it did. And I realized that in the last couple videos, probably the last 3 videos, I've been slowly falling back into my Let's Play-isms. And the first time that I did the Clay Soldiers mod, it was very much a Let's Play-ism. I reworked it a little bit, but I still don't think it's perfect. And once again, I think the biggest flaw in these couple early videos here was that I rarely, if ever, tried to escape. I tried to escape in the very first mod, and I tried to escape at the end of Clay Soldiers. Granted, I only tried to escape at the end of Clay Soldiers after the initial recording. It was only in the second recording that I tried, and that's because I realized I was doing nothing with the narrative. It needed to be made clear to the viewer, and this is the fault. It needed to be made clear to the viewer that there was no getting out. Up until now, I was kind of just doing whatever the sign maker wanted me to without question, and I never made it explicitly clear that I had to. That I had no other choice. And once I actually got to the mental breakdown stage of Fate's Grasp, it didn't have much of an impact because it didn't really seem that much like I had a reason to be that panicky and concerned about everything.
What do you want from me?
The first time I did this recording, though, as I mentioned going into it, went into the Let's Play isms of everything, where I just kind of walked through and did everything, and I actually found very early on that I was running out of things to commentate about. I was running out of things to say and do, and I kind of started to even go into a casting kind of mindset, where I was doing like sideline commentary on the whole fight, and in the end it was terrible. It was everything was terrible about the initial recording. It was just absolutely horrible, and I wasn't happy with it when I recorded it, much less even after I re-recorded it. I felt a lot better after I re-recorded it. But even then, I'm still not super happy with it.
Are you friendly?
In the initial recording on this one, though, I would sit around and wait in every battle until the battle was over, instead of maybe leaving when it was mostly done, and you kind of knew who'd won. I sat there and waited the first time round, and that did wonders to adding things for me to talk about and keep the viewer engaged. I didn't even do too much to help the battles along and make the battles more interesting. With a lot of the battles, it was just one color against another color. So I went around in the second take and actually added a lot more elements, so each one of the fights felt very different from each other. Something new that they would have in, a new animal, a new ability, something to help them along.